Chapter 31. A new member, kinda. And thanks to my beta, Darreldeem, for going over this for me. All mistakes left are my own, especially since I have a bad habit of adding things and not sending it back to him. Disclaimer. I don't own anything related to Harry Potter. That privilege belongs to J.K. Rowling and all those who she lets make money for her. HPHPHP, August 22, 1992. It was time to go to Diagon Alley and get school supplies. They went as a group again. Everyone decided to meet up at the Leaky Cauldron instead of the Potter home. They did warn the shop owners that they would be descending on them once again. Since only 4 of the mutineers needed wands, Luna, Astoria, Spencer, and Ellie, they split so the first years would go there first, while everyone else had breakfast at the cauldron, which consisted of eggs, rashers of bacon, sausage, fried bread, and beans. Then the first years would intermingle with the second years. They all missed having the Weasleys with them. Luna was especially upset that Marley had pulled Ginny away from the group. The Potter boys still heard from the Weasley twins. They wrote on the sly using Muggle mail. Ginny wasn't allowed to go to the village near their home alone, so they passed her notes with their letters. The Potters had set up a P.O. box just for the Muggle-borns the boys had met during their first year. After the first years got their wands, they split up into groups of 5 or 6. The Greengrass girls, Luna, Harry, and Dean were in one group. Astoria kept teasing Harry and Daphne about being girlfriend and boyfriend, even though they weren't doing anything. Causing the small group to laugh and Harry and Daphne to blush. It didn't make them separate, though. Lily, who was one of the chaperones, just laughed along with the rest. "Don't worry, sweetie. It's what little sisters do." "I used to do it all the time to Petunia," she said, patting Harry on the shoulder, a wistful look in her green eyes as she remembered the good times she had with her sister before they found out she was a witch. Everything changed that day in the park when she met Severus. Oh, how her sister hated her after that, and nothing she said or tried changed that. She shuddered at the thought that Dumbledore had wanted to put this young man with her spiteful sister. This group was getting robes at the moment. They were sharing the shop with the Malfoys. Draco had been surprisingly polite. He still picked on non-purebloods and got into plenty of fights with Ron about Seamus and Hermione, but never around the Potters. "Ah, Lily Potter, how are you this fine day?" Lucius asked, tipping into a small bow. "Lucius," Lily replied neutrally, her head bobbed and her face was blank. "We're fine. Yourself?" The rest of the group stood back and watched, trying not to draw attention to themselves. They surrounded Dean and his mum, keeping them in the middle of the group. Lucius looked over the assembled people, and though his nose wrinkled, he kept his opinion to himself. "We are well. Doing a bit of remodeling of the manor, but nothing drastic," he said airily, waving his hand, indicating it was nothing important. "I'm sure. Say, Lucius, I hear you have a house elf named Darby who gives you a bit of a bother. Do you want to sell him to us?" "It would be a late birthday present to our boy hero," she asked with a sudden inspiration. "Darby, you say? Yes, well, he is a bit high-strung. How did you hear about him?" "Oh, one of our elves was talking about the differences between house elf personalities to one of the Muggle-borns at the house, and Darby's name came up. They think he is a bad elf. We wanted to see if we could, you know." "Tame him," she said, pulling the first thing she thought of that would let the man think Darby wouldn't be going into an ideal situation. "Tell you what, as a token of my appreciation on that little project you are doing for me, I will gift him to your twins," Lucius stated, as if he was giving away the crown jewels. Lily forced a look of excitement onto her face. "Would you really? That would be wonderful and very generous of you. I know house elves are hard to train properly. It will give the boys a sense of responsibility. Can you do so now?" The rest of her group looked at her like she had lost her mind. Only Harry was laughing inside. "Of course," the blond man said through his teeth, not really wanting to do it publicly, but then again it might help his image. His son looked on with an air of confusion. "Darby. Master calls for Darby." The little elf appeared in a worn, raggedy pillowcase. He bowed quickly to his horrid master. "I am releasing your bond from me to the Potter twins. You are now theirs." A blue light surrounded Lucius and Darby, and then the light moved from the adult blonde to Harry, whose eyes got wide, and a smile broke out on his face. Darby bounced in place. His whole demeanor changed from subservient to joyful confidence. "Darby is belonging to the great." "Darby," Harry yelled, hopefully fast enough. though he did see a conniving glint in Mr. Malfoy's eyes, along with a bit of confusion. "Go to the manor and talk to Tilly about your duties," he commanded firmly, wanting to keep up the ruse of training the excitable house elf. "Yes, sir, Master Harry Potter, sir." And with that the elf popped away. "That was well done, Mr. Potter, though you should have added a bit of self-punishment," Lucius drawled. "Come, Draco, we are finished here, Mrs. Potter, until we meet again." And with a nodding of heads they left. The whole group relaxed until, "How could you do that?" came a shrill voice of a bushy-headed second year they all knew well. No one had seen the Grangers enter with the Weasleys. "How could we do what? Rescue an abused house elf? Rather easy, I'd say," Harry answered back, rubbing the back of his head, not really sure what had upset this girl. "That is slavery," Hermione yelled, stamping her foot. Her parents were in shock behind her. All the while Arthur whispered the real reason why house elves needed to be bonded to wizards hurriedly in their ears. "No, it's not." "Where did you get that idea from?" Daphne defended the Potters' actions. She knew this was one of the reasons Muggle-borns were looked down on. They always jumped to conclusions. "How can it not be?" Hermione asked venomously, turning her anger to Daphne. Daphne just tightened her jaw and stood her ground. "Hermione," Harry said, trying to stop the argument before it escalated even more, "you're a smart girl. Have you even read about house elves? They are not human, you know. For all you know, you're accusing someone of doing something evil when it is actually saving a life. I, for one, think you'd better do a bit more studying on it before you make wild assumptions," he said, overly polite. He never understood why Gary liked this studious, bossy person. Every time he ever interacted with her, she would be making despairing remarks about him and the entire wizarding world. Plus, she never listened to explanations. "Hermione Jean Granger, you stop this instant. I am ashamed of you, fighting in public," the woman who could only be her mother snapped. She had just mulled over what Mr. Weasley was trying to explain and decided to get books on all magical beings so something like this wouldn't happen again. Hermione hung her head, but you could tell this argument was not over by the steel glint in her eyes. "I think we should go to the bookstore, since this shop appears to be full right now," Mr. Granger said as he guided his family out the door. The Weasleys followed, Arthur mouthing apologies behind Marley's back. Lily winked at him. She felt sorry for that hen-pecked man. Madame Malkin, seeing the excitement was over, herded the children to the stools to get their measurements. She was happy because she now had gossip. "What was that all about?" Dean asked. He never doubted for a minute that the Potters were doing something well-intentioned. They always did. "I'll explain everything later," Harry offered as he stepped up onto a stool, the tape measure zooming around his body. "Don't worry, Dean. It was all for a good reason," Daphne said in support as she waited her turn. "That poor girl, her head is surrounded by Nargles," Luna added her 2 nuts worth. She had no idea who Hermione was. "You might be right about that," Astoria said, patting Luna's arm. Luna was hardly ever wrong when it came to people. Gary's group at the bookstore. "Oh my, would you look at this crowd?" Frank said, leading his gang of kids in to Flourish and Blatz. There was a line of middle-aged women outside the store. They stretched down the street almost to the ice cream parlor. "I wonder what's going on here. It looks like that Ponce, Lockhart, is signing books today," James said, pointing at a sign with said Ponce in all his life-size glory. A collective groan was heard. They all wondered why this man's books were on the school list. Having read the ones in the Potter Manor, they felt they were nothing but trash. Some cartoned on to why early, but they didn't want to believe it. "Come on, let's just get our books and leave," Neville suggested, going around the line of overly perfumed women. "Yeah," Gary agreed. "The less time they spent here, the better off they'd be. We'll get everyone so they don't have to come here. They can pay us back later." He looked to his father for confirmation and received a nod in return. So Gary, Neville, Susan, Spencer and Tracy split up and gathered books for everyone. Each decided on which subject they would pick up. It was finalized they would collect the subject they were best at, except Spencer, who would get all the first-year books, sans defense. James went with Spencer to help the first year out. Gary had the worst of it, since he had to get the defense books, and there were 7 of this idiot man's books, and he had to buy them for every mutineer. Thank Merlin for bottomless baskets. He was making his way to the counter to pay when he was grabbed from behind. He held on to his basket by sheer luck. "Merlin's beard, it's Gary Potter," came an overly cheerful voice. When Gary turned, he saw Gilderoy Lockhart with his stupid, overstyled blonde hair and way to shiny white teeth, holding him. "Get off me, you git," Gary said, stamping on the man's foot, causing him to jump up and down in place for a minute, which Gary used to make his escape. He subtly cast a wandless, flatulent spell and giggled when a loud PFFFFTTTTT filled the air. He paid for his books while Lockhart stuttered out apologies. "Gary, are you all right?" James said, having come in just in time to see Gary defend himself. His eyes were sparkling with mirth at the fart that had rendered from the Ponce's arse. He knew what his son had done. "Yeah, Dad. I got all the defense books. Can we leave now?" Gary said as he lifted the very large, feather-weight bag to show he was done. "Best wait for everyone else. Why don't you stand by the door and we'll meet you there? That way you can stay away from the commotion at the front, and that Ponce won't see you again," his dad suggested, ruffling his hair. Gary nodded and went to the front of the store. He leaned against the wall between the door and the display window, chuckling at all the nonsense the women were spouting. Really, these people believed this overstuffed peacock did all these things. He shook his head and waited. He had been standing there for 5 minutes when an argument broke out between Mr. Weasley and Mr. Malfoy. That argument turned into a small fight. Gary was tempted to go and show his support when Hagrid broke the men up and ushered Mr. Weasley and his group out the door. No one noticed the additional book in Ginny's cauldron. "I wonder what that was all about," Neville said as he joined Gary by the door. He had had to gather all the herbology books. It was surprising that Gary was done earliest, but then again all his books were in one place, since every year had been assigned the same books. "Don't know," the dark-haired boy said with a shrug, "but I hope Mr. Weasley popped him a good one." "Yeah." The two friends talked about their summers and the new school year. One by one, the rest joined them, until at last James and Spencer were finished. They went to join the rest of their crowd to let them know they got all the books. Soon a lunch of fish and chip or kidney pie was eaten, much to the pleasure of Tom the barman, and everyone went home happy. As soon as Harry exited the flue, he was accosted by a very happy house elf, who was now dressed in a clean pillowcase. "Harry Potter, sir. Darby is most excited to be bonded to the great Harry Potter," said the being attached to Harry's leg. "Something you want to tell me, Harry?" James asked with an accusing tone, though you could see the mischief in his eyes. "It wasn't me, it was Mum," Harry said in defense, trying to unwrap Darby from his legs. James looked at Lily, who was giggling so hard she was bent in half. She raised her hand and tried to get herself under control. A few minutes and many deep breaths later, she finally had enough air to answer. "It was a spur-of-the-moment thing," she said, still wiping the mirthful tears from her eyes. "Lucius was in the robe shop, and it just hit me that we could question Darby about his warning if we owned him. So I tricked him into giving him to us, well, the twins. That was very sneaky, my beautiful, intelligent wife," James said, and then he planted a kiss on said wife. Stop that," came twin voices. "Shut it," James said, turning to his blushing sons. "Let's go into the sitting room," Lily suggested, grabbing James' hand and leading the way. "Darby, join us." "Yes, Mistress Potter, ma'am," after they settled onto a couch, facing the still-standing house elf, who looked very nervous. "Darby, sit on that chair there," James ordered, pointing to a chair at the side of the couch. "Uses asking Darby to sit as an equal." The little elf squeaked, pulling his ear in confusion. "No one has ever asked Darby to sit." Tears started to form in those huge bulbous eyes. "Well, you're part of the Potter family now, and we don't stand on ceremony when we are not in public. I want to ask you a few questions, and then you can attend your duties. I would rather you sit while I ask," James explained in a firm voice. "Yes, sir, Master Potter, sir," Darby said, as he tentatively sat on the chair indicated, expecting to be punished for following the order. "Listen," Harry said kindly, "we don't punish our elves, but we do know that you need to be kept busy, and that you need direct orders to do something, so if Dad comes off a bit harsh, it's because he wants to make sure you understand the order. Okay?" James had been raised that house elves were indentured servants, and you treated them as such. Lily had calmed his attitude down a lot, but he was still very firm in his orders. "Yes, sir. Master Harry Potter, sir." "Okay, Darby, what can you tell us about the danger that will be coming to Hogwarts this year? We're assuming that it has something to do with Lucius," Lily asked, getting to the heart of the matter. "Ah, ma'am, Darby is not knowing much." Darby is hearing the bad master saying that he is going to best doing something to get rid of the mudbloods. He is saying that there will be great danger. That is all Darby knows. Mistress Lily Potter, ma'am, the elf answered, a bit more relaxed since there had been no orders for punishment. Why did you come and tell Harry? He is not a muggle-born, James asked, leaning forward, just a little grabbing the elf's attention. Harry Potter is the greatest wizard of all times to the House Elves. We remembers the bad times when the Dark Lord ruled. He did bad things to us, and Harry Potter destroyed the bad master's master. Darby will always protect Harry Potter, so when he is hearing that bad things were going to happen at Hogwarts, he did what he could to warn him, Darby explained, pulling his ears at his past transgressions. Darby, stop pulling your ears. You are not in trouble, Harry ordered gently. Darby, do you remember seeing anything that might be helpful? Lily asked. Any dark object that Lucius would pay attention to when he was planning? Darby thought for a minute, and then his large eyes lit up. Darby is remembering a dark book. The Dark Lord is giving this book to the Bad Master. The Bad Master is taking this book off the shelves when he is planning. Darby remembers he brought this book to the alley today, Darby said, bouncing with exhilaration that he could help the great Harry Potter and his family. Then he deflated. Darby cannot tell you what the book looks like, only that it is dark leather and about this big, he said, making motions with his hands, showing that the book would be smallish sized. The Potters exchanged looks. It wasn't much, but it was something. Thank you, Darby. You've been very helpful. Go and see Tilly. She'll tell you what the twins need, James ordered, not knowing Harry had already given that order. Darby is being knowings. Tilly is telling Darby just what the great Potter twins is being needing, Darby said, jumping down from the chair, and with a bow to the family he popped away. I wonder how long it is going to take for his excitement to calm down, Gary said, smirking at his frustrated brother. Merlin, I hope it is soon. I never wanted a fan in the manor. It has always been a safe haven for us, Harry groaned, leaning back on the couch, his eyes closed. You're just glad it's not you, Pratt. He blindly swiped at his twin, who ducked and punched Harry's arm in retaliation. The two boys tussled on the couch until their parents stopped them. Don't worry, Harry. I'll speak with him, James said, patting the poor boy on the head as they got up to put the shopping away. Thanks, Dad, was the rejoinder. The Potters spent the rest of the day laughing at the antics of their newest member or just hiding in Harry's case. Lily sent what they knew to the headmaster, and the boys mirrored all the mutineers to be on the lookout for strange books. They told Sally, and she in turn warned the ghosts at Hogwarts. Chapter 32. A New Year Begins. And thanks to my beta, Darreldeem, for going over this for me. All mistakes are my own. And once again, I would like to reiterate that electronic entertainment has been brought up to date. It is necessary for my plot in the education of the purebloods. Disclaimer. I don't own anything related to Harry Potter. That privilege belongs to J.K. Rowling and all those who she lets make money for her. HPHPHP, a short narration. The train ride was uneventful, but for many more students joining the mutineers in their carriage. Many of the neutral wizardrays that had visited the Potter Manor over the summer decided that it would be okay to hang out with this group. They and their parents had learned a lot about muggles, and the computers went a long way in helping with that. The welcoming feast went off without a hitch, except the many groans of the group when Lockhart was introduced as the Dada Professor. Many felt that Dumbledore had lost his marbles. That aside, it was a good feast. Things didn't go so well with the adults. The Potters and Maunders had called the parents together once again and made them take the same vow. The Dunbars and the Jamesons declined, so were not told, and they could only hope the kids wouldn't tell their parents. The rest of the group took Harry's Parselmouth ability rather well. Some of them already expected it. His giggling around any snake was kind of a giveaway. Lily's research went a long way in helping others get over their innate fears. The group decided as a whole that if this ever got out, then the book should be sold at the same kiosk that sold the crystals and mirrors. The mutineers were on the lookout for the book Darby had warned about. No one had seen it yet. Since Ginny was not part of the pro-security group, she was still undecided about going against her mum. She wasn't told to watch for it. The Weasley twins were keeping an eye on her. She was acting different, and they couldn't tell why. The red-headed girl looked like she wasn't getting any sleep at night, but when asked, she said she was fine. According to their maps, so far she wasn't going out of her dorm at night, so they were confused. Ran, on the other hand, didn't see anything wrong with his sister and blew off their concerns. Luna was worried about her friend. Ginny was pulling away from everyone. Luna, who was sorted into Ravenclaw, was picked on the first day she was in the common room. Those bullies soon found out that this atypical little girl was not friendless. When Padma, Harry and the other mutineers stood firm at her side and informed them, quite plainly, they would retaliate. The bullies, seeing they were outnumbered, backed off. Even with all the watching going on, classes and Quidditch practice life at Hogwarts was uneventful, except Lockhart making a fool of himself on a daily basis. It was a good thing the mutineers had decided to learn on their own. The wandless lessons were going off without a hitch. The mutineers figured they would teach the non-mutineers defense at the very least. The upper ears would have to fend for themselves, unfortunately. At the beginning of October, both Potters tried out for their teams and were both taken on as seekers, much to the relief of the Ravenclaw and Gryffindor team captains. October 31, 1992, Gary, Neville and Dean were invited to nearly headless Nick's Death Day party after they tried to cheer him up. He had been declined to join the headless hunt once again, so they offered to show support to him at his party. Gary being hailed as the boy who lived held some value, even with the castle ghosts. Being forewarned by the other ghosts what a Death Day party entailed, they made sure to visit the kitchens before they went. They also made sure to get permission from their head of house before going. She was more than happy to give it and awarded points for standing up for the Gryffindor house ghost. The party was held in one of the deeper dungeons. All of the ghosts of the castle were invited. The room was made of the same stone as the rest of the castle. It was dark down there, and the walls were wet, though not dripping. It was also very cold, as ghosts didn't need to be warmed. The boys did their best not to complain about the party and endured the cold and dark for their friend. The rotten food at the tables on the wall almost made the boys lose their dinners, though they were glad they ate before coming. Even Professor Watts was there, and she regaled the boys with stories of her own death day. They met Moaning Myrtle and tried to keep her from, well, moaning. Gary even offered to dance with her, but Peeves came along and started teasing the poor girl until she wailed and flew away. Sally was there, though only Gary and the ghosts could see her. She was watching the party to make sure the kids were safe. She scared Peeves off after what he did to Myrtle. She was upset at the uppity ghosts who disrupted Nick's speech, and in one slicing movement of her hand, she removed the string of dead flesh that held Nick's head to his body. Everyone rejoiced, and Nick, in a fit of happiness, declined the pretentious ghost's invitation to join the hunt that year. It was getting on 10 p.m., which was when the party in the Great Hall would end, and the boys were making their way to the dorms. Many of the castle ghosts joined them, wanting to make sure they got where they needed to be. When they got to the second floor, near Moaning Myrtle's bathroom, they could hear the rest of the student body down the hall and turned to make their way towards them. Gary stopped suddenly, and the other two bumped into him. "What did you stop for?" Dean asked, rubbing his slightly injured nose. Gary just pointed at the writing on the wall and the cat that hung from the light fixture. In red ink, well, they hoped it was ink, were the words, "The Chamber of Secrets has been open. Enemies of the air, beware." "Oh," said Neville, "that's not good. Do you think it has something to do with the book?" he asked in a shaky voice. The boys started backing up from the scene, making sure they didn't touch anything. "Yeah, it might," Gary said. He turned to one of the ghosts that had followed them. "You need to tell a professor or the headmaster," he said as they inched further away from the bathroom. Professor Watts joined the boys and looked thoughtful. This was something she had learned about last year and was going to discuss it in future classes, but she decided the next class might be more pertinent. She whispered that the boys shouldn't worry too much, as the ghosts would vouch for their whereabouts for the night. The rest of the student body came across the three boys and stopped to stare at the words on the wall. "I hope that's ink," someone said from the back. Heads nodded in agreement. Filch came from behind the students and barked, "Why are you all standing in the middle of the hall?" Then he saw Mrs. Norris hanging from the lamp and gave a strangled cry. "Who did this? Who did this to my cat?" He turned and saw Gary standing there and went to grab him. You did this to Mrs. Norris," he shouted, and then he saw Harry standing next to his brother. "Or was it you? Why did you do this to my cat?" "Don't be stupid, you foolish old man," snapped Professor Watts. Gary was with me and all the ghosts in the castle the entire night, she defended her student. Well, except Myrtle, she left early. And Harry was in the Great Hall, chimed in Professor Flitwick. Many students nodded at these words. Argus, Dumbledore said as he came onto the scene, take Mrs. Norris down, and we will adjourn elsewhere to see if we can understand what happened to her. Gary, Mr. Potter, he said, deliberately showing favoritism, you too will join us. I think not, the diminutive charms professor said. Both these boys have firm alibis. You are not going to make scapegoats out of students by singling them out. He stood firmly by the boys' sides. That was not my intention at all, the headmaster said serenely. I merely wanted to know what their thoughts were. They are children, their thoughts are unimportant. We as adults should be handling this. Someone needs to call the auras. Remember, Albus, you are still on probation. Phileas stood firm. The other professors, bar Snape, nodded their heads in agreement. It was too late. Rumors had already been started among the students. It was a good thing that the mutineers had the best gossip mongers on their side. Parvati and Lavender were the best at squelching unwanted gossip. Already you could hear them defending the Potter twins. Other voices soon joined them. The professors herded the students away to their dorms. Mirrors were used well that night. Sally joined Harry when he was talking with his twin mentally. Call Gary on the mirror. I have news, and it will be quicker this way. So Harry pulled out his mirror, activated the security, and called his brother. What's up, Sally? Gary asked. Myrtle told me that she saw Ginny Weasley go into her bathroom tonight, said she seemed possessed and was carrying a book. She was the one to put the writing on the wall. I don't want to tell a professor yet and ask Myrtle to keep it to herself for now. She is just going to tell them it was a student, but she doesn't know which one. I want you guys to see if you can get that book away from the poor girl. It is probably a Horcrux, she explained. If I see her in the morning, I'll do what I can, Gary offered. This explains her actions thus far. If she is being possessed, then she isn't in her right mind. We have to help. If I see her first, I'll summon it out of her bag. It might come to me because of my own Horcrux, Harry said, and then thought a moment. If not, I'll just bump into her and take it. I'm pretty good at pickpocketing. Sirius taught us well, he added. If you can't let me know, she still likes me better than you and she might give me the book if I ask, Gary said thoughtfully. While Ginny wasn't crushing like she was before, she still preferred Gary over Harry. The three continued to make plans until the boys grew too tired to think. Sally held off lessons that night and let them sleep. After a quick mirror call to the parents, they signed off with warnings of being careful and slept. Gary missed Ginny the next morning, but Harry didn't. He found he couldn't summon the diary, so he sidled up to her on the pretense of asking if she was okay, which he really wanted to know, but used it to palm the book out of her bag. He slipped it into his own and left the Gryffindor table with words of encouragement to the younger girl. On Monday, history class became the main topic of conversation once again, and Gary was looking forward to the lesson. He went into the classroom and sat at his assigned seat, which was still next to Hermione, and waited for Professor Watts to start the lecture. The professor came in and called for quiet. When the class calmed down, she started her lesson. As a ghost, I am privy to a lot of information that you are not. There is little written history of the Chamber of Secrets, but here is what I know from those who have passed on. Salazar Slytherin disagreed with the other Hogwarts founders about the importance and the acceptance of Muggle-borns at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. As the other founders were against him in this matter, he left the school. According to legend, before he left, he created a secret chamber deep underground in Hogwarts Castle, known as the Chamber of Secrets. This chamber was home to a monster. We're not telling you what it is, just that we know and will handle it. She didn't want them to know it was a basilisk. It was allegedly supposed to purge the school of all Muggle-born students. Slytherin's spirit denies this, but it is legend. It is also stated that only his heirs could open his room through the use of Parseltongue. Over the centuries after Salazar Slytherin's death, many headmasters conducted searches of the school to find the chamber. None, however, were successful, and the chamber was dismissed as a mere legend by many. When the chamber was opened in 1943, it was revealed to be real, yet still never found. The sound of Quill's meeting parchment was heard throughout the room as most students wrote down the lecture. Professor Watts was notorious for give homework on her lectures and not just what was in the history books. There is clear evidence that the chamber has been opened more than once between its creation and the 20th century. When first created, the chamber was accessed through a concealed trapdoor and a series of magical tunnels. However, when Hogwarts plumbing became more elaborate in the 18th century, the entrance to the chamber was threatened, being located on the site of a proposed bathroom. The heir in school at the time was a student called Corvinus Gaunt, direct descendant of Slytherin. He explained to me how the simple trapdoor was secretly protected. He told future heirs so that those who knew how could still access the entrance to the chamber even after newfangled plumbing had been placed on top of it. She stopped for a moment to see if they were paying attention and noted that every student there was hanging on to her every word. So she continued, tapping her ever-present ruler on her leg. The chamber was last opened during the 1940–1943 school year by a young boy by the name of Tom Marvolo Riddle. She glared at the students that started whispering. They remembered her lesson from last year on who Riddle was. He, as you know, was later known as Lord Voldemort. Through his mother, he was the last remaining direct descendant of Salazar Slytherin. In his 5th year, Riddle located the secret entrance to the Chamber of Secrets and was able to control the monster. He turned the beast loose on the school, injuring many. The last victim was a student named Myrtle Warren, who you know as Moaning Myrtle. She was killed in the girls' bathroom. Hogwarts was due to be closed, which upset Mr. Riddle, who did not want to return to the Muggle orphanage in which he was raised. He framed fellow student Rubeus Hagrid, who had concealed a pet acromantula named Aragog. Mr. Riddle convinced the headmaster at the time, Armando Dippet, who is the one that relayed this story to me, that Aragog was the monster that had terrorized the school. Mr. Hagrid was expelled, and Mr. Riddle received an engraved trophy for special services to the school. Now that the Aurors know this, they are doing what they can to get Mr. Hagrid a trial. Hopefully he will be cleared and can use a wand again. Again, she stopped taking a look at many hopeful faces, glad to see so many would stand up for justice. This is what I've been told by the spirits that passed on from this school. She started to conclude her lecture. Myrtle informed us last night that the chamber had been opened, and though she told us how, we will not be telling you. Leave it to the adults to handle this. I am only informing you about the chamber, so you will not go through the trouble of looking for it. The Aurors have been called, and a watch has been posted to keep you kids out of there. They are still trying to find a way to open the chamber and rid us of the monster. Your homework is to write a 1-foot parchment on the difference between legend and fact. What I have told you is both. I want you to separate my lecture on what is fact and what is not, and explain how you know. You need to learn to tell the difference. She turned to the board and motioned to the lesson written there by one of the upper ears. Write this down and turn it in on Wednesday. Quills flew over parchment as the students followed the instructions. Many were excited about the lesson and couldn't wait to do the homework. The bell rang and the students gathered up their books and left the class none too quietly. Gary let Harry know what had been said and got back the mental message. Dumbledore's not going to like this. Causing both boys to chuckle. HPHPHPN. The lecture is adapted from Harry Potter Wiki. Chapter 33. How do you stop a tidal wave? And thanks to my beta, Darreldeem, for going over this for me. All mistakes left are my own. Disclaimer. I don't own anything related to Harry Potter. That privilege belongs to J.K. Rowling and all those who she lets make money for her. And if you like this story, then please check out my others. None of them are like this one, but you might still like them. HPHPHP November 3, 1992. They were right, Dumbledore didn't like the lesson. But he learned last year there was little he could do about Professor Isabel Watts. She told it like it was, and if he didn't like it, tough. The headmaster also didn't like that there were Aurors in the school. There was round-the-clock surveillance around Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. Myrtle liked it, though. There was always someone around to complain to. It was after class, and Harry was sitting in his common room looking at the innocent-seeming leather-bound book. Tom Riddle was the name on the front of it, and he knew who that was. He opened it and noted it was blank. However, there was an overwhelming urge to write in the book. Harry ignored the charm, but was very curious. He got a quill and ink and wrote, Harry Potter, November 3, 1992, as if it was his own diary. The ink disappeared and the words formed, Hello, Harry Potter. My name in Tom Riddle. Well, that's weird, Harry thought to himself. He knew he should stop, but he wondered about the man who tried to kill him. He was about to write some more when the book was ripped from his hands and thrown into the fireplace. What the hell do you think you're doing? Terry Boot whispered furiously at the dark-haired boy. You know that book already possessed someone. Are you trying to be the next? He glared at his friend for being stupid. You're right, thanks, Terry. I have no idea what came over me, Harry said, and then looked at the fire and noted the book was not burning. You probably saved mine or someone else's life. Who knows if I could have fought that diary off, thanks. He clapped his friend on the shoulder and then got up and started towards the stairs. I'm going to have to wait until the fire dies to get that. Keep an eye on it for a minute. I need to call my mum, he asked his still pissed-off dorm mate. Yeah, mate, but hurry. I don't want to be alone with that thing, Terry said, nodding his head, and sat right in front of the fireplace, thankful there were only a few students in the common room. Harry ran upstairs and grabbed his mirror. He activated security and said, Lily Potter. Lily's face came on and she answered, What's wrong now? I swear we never should have let you guys go to Hogwarts. She seemed tired. There were dark rings under her eyes, like she hadn't gotten any sleep lately. Mum, I need you to send me something to put that book in. There's a compulsion charm on it, and the Horcrux interacts with anyone who writes in it, Harry explained, ignoring his mum's griping, though he was worried about her health. Oh, sweetie, don't tell me you wrote in it. You know who it belonged to. Nothing good can come of that, she said, looking over her child as best she could through the mirror. She nodded and looked relieved that he didn't seem possessed. I'll send a box right now. Tilly will be there in a few minutes. Put the book in the box and give it to her. We'll take it from there. Try and make sure no one sees her, came the short orders. All right, Mum, sorry to worry you. I just wanted to know who Riddle was when he was a teenager. I thought maybe I could find out why he turned out the way he did. But you're right, it was stupid. I didn't mean to worry you. I won't do it again, Harry apologized profusely. What he said was true. It was dumb to think he could control something as dark as a Horcrux. Lily sighed and ran a weary hand over her face. She didn't know how much more trouble she could take. I'm not really angry, but Harry, you could have been hurt, and you know that I don't want you or your brother hurt in any way. She looked away, and then could be heard giving orders to Tilly to get the box to Harry. Tilly is on her way. Just put the book in the box and give it back to her. I love you, sweetie. Try not to defy any Dark Lords for at least a week. I don't think my heart can handle it, she said with a smile to let him know that he wasn't in trouble. Tilly popped into the room. Okay, Mum, Tilly is here. It might be a minute. Terry threw the book in the fire, so I have to wait until it burns down some. But the second it does, I'll get it to you, Harry said, glad his mum wasn't too mad at him. Harry, are you a wizard or not? You've been floating things since you could crawl. Just levitate it into the box, Lily said, exasperated. Harry blushed and smiled sheepishly. Well, you're the one who always made us try and do without magic. You said we get lazy, he said in mock accusation, then sobered up seeing as his mum wasn't smiling. He did wonder what was going on at home to make his mum so short-tempered. Just get the book. Done. And the mirror went blank. Harry stared at the mirror in confusion. His mum was rarely that sharp with them. He looked at Tilly and wondered if he should ask her, then figured she wouldn't tell anyway, so he held out his hand for the box, smiling at the little house elf. Tilly gave Harry the box and he went downstairs. Terry was still watching the fireplace and the non-burning book. Terry, Harry whispered, bringing the other boy's attention to him, make sure the coast is clear. Mum sent me a container to put that in, but I don't want anyone seeing. He creeped as close to the fireplace as he could get, placed the box on the floor and opened it. Terry looked around and noted that the 5 people left in the room were focused on their homework. You're clear, but hurry. Harry cast a wandless, wordless levitation spell and floated the book into the box. You could feel the heat on the diary, but not even a page was singed. He quickly closed the box and thanked Terry and ran up the stairs. He gave it to Tilly and thanked her. He got his mirror out and called his mum. He told her it was on the way and disconnected. It was getting late, and he wanted to see if he could take a nap before Sally came and trained him. The next day at the manor, the hunters gathered once again to make their reports. After greetings were made and the meeting called to order, they started. Once again, Augusta was the first to report. Well, from the history lessons going on at Hogwarts, there is a lot of gossip. Tom seems to be the main topic, which is good for us. More and more people are remembering things about him from when he was in school and right after, the eldest woman said, and then she took a sip of her tea. We already have the ring, the diary, and the necklace, and Professor Watts gave us information on the orphanage, so we have another area to look. From what I have heard, we might be looking for the Hufflepuff cup and the Ravenclaw diadem. There is also talk about the Gryffindor sword, but no one has seen the diadem or the sword since the time of the founders, so we don't know if Tom found them or not. He just asked many questions about them during his time working at the store. Well, that's something, James said as the group mulled it over. They had come to a standstill in their search. It was keeping them up at night, that and having something more happen at Hogwarts. Amelia, how goes it with the goblins? He asked, turning to the formidable DMLE head. Slowly, she sighed. She had been in talks with them for months but was getting nowhere. They don't like us poking around. I tried to tell them what might be in their vaults, but they said without evidence they can do nothing. We have the diary, with Riddle's name on it. Do you think it might help? We haven't cleansed it yet. Oh, and you can tell them we know how to rid the Horcruxes of the soul pieces without damaging the container. That might help, Lily said excitedly. She was very proud of her group's accomplishment. Yes, that might be just what I need, Amelia said thoughtfully, though she was loath to even touch the box the book was in. I don't know how susceptible goblins are to compulsion charms, but you might warn them anyway, James warned. He didn't want them to get on the bad side of that nation. Another good idea, the monocled woman stated. Wonderful, was there anything else? James asked, clapping and rubbing his hands together. He loved it when things worked out. Maybe they could get some much-needed sleep. I am worried about the Dunbars and the Jamesons, Albert Boot said, a concerned look in his eyes. We should call the parents together again and discuss it. Why are you worried about them? They took a vow, Lily asked, noting the man's troubled face. Yes, but there are ways around that vow, he said solemnly. I was thinking, we didn't tell them about Harry's parseltongue, but they did tell the children. The children can still tell their parents, making it so the parents can tell the press, because we didn't tell them that day and they didn't join us for the other meeting. He broke off, letting them connect the dots. Shite, James said, ignoring his wife's reprimand. That is not good. Damn it. Any suggestion? We could use Harry to open the chamber, Amelia suggested. So far they hadn't been able to get in there. They blasted the sink apart and tried cutting around it, but the wards were too strong. They even called in curse breakers, but still nothing. Let's hold off on that, James said, not wanting his child anywhere near a basilisk. Unless we really have to, I don't want him involved. That and the headmaster would know and use it against us. We start selling the book, Sirius said, he mind running over solutions. If Skeeter got a hold of this, it would be very, very bad. That might draw attention faster, Kenton Brocklehurst said as he too went over the problem. We could go to the press first, or do both. Go to the press about the book and why we want it sold, Remus said. He looked at James and Lily. Remember what I said about crowd mentality. If you tell everyone at once, then you are likely to control what they think. If you hide it and it gets out, then you've lost that control. I say get your lawyer on it as well. But the headmaster, Lily started only to be interrupted. Will know no matter what you do. You can't hide this. You can control it, Remus said gently. So if we get one of the more reputable reporters, and Zeno, of course, and tell them a story about how we just learned Harry's ability, then we sell our little book explaining why we wrote it. And we're going to have to think on that, Lily said, worry now etched in her face, her finger tapping away on the table in thought, until James grabbed her hand to make her stop. So much for a good night's sleep. Let's call another meeting, and we can decide as a group, just like we always do, James suggested, and the meeting broke up from there. The next day at the Castle, Parvati approached Gary the next day with a gleam in her eyes, meaning she had good gossip. There was also a hint of worry. What's up, Parvati? He asked when she got close enough. So me and Lavender have been busy. She started taking Gary's sleeve and pulling him away from the other students. It all started when the headmaster tried to take you and Harry away on Halloween. There are rumors that both of you are the heirs of Slytherin. We're doing our best to crush that rumor since we know your family tree. It is a good thing it is well known you keep the tree at the manor and anyone can see it. I don't see the problem, Gary said, as he leaned against the wall out of the way of the student body traffic. He had been going to the great hall for study hour, and the halls were busy. That's not all I've heard, she whispered, getting close enough not to be overheard. Someone talked, we think. There's rumor that there is a Parselmouth at Hogwarts, because Professor Watts said that only a Parselmouth could open the Chamber of Secrets, then there must be one here. And with the rumor about you two being the heirs of Slytherin, well, you can see where this is going, she explained, worrying her robe sleeve. Shite, Gary said, and relayed the message on to Harry via their link. He heard Harry cuss back in the same way. Thanks for telling me, Parvati, he said, and gave her an absent-minded kiss on the cheek and wandered away. She giggled and said to herself, I better not tell Susan, and followed the dazed boy to the hall.